Welcome to another meeting of the Lorain County Commissioners, broadcast exclusively on your Lorain County Community College education station. The Lorain County Commissioners cordially invite you to see the meetings live and in person every Thursday morning. The meetings are located in the Lorain County Administration Building, located at 226 Middle Avenue in downtown Elyria. The meetings start at 9:30 a.m. on most weeks. Now, enjoy the meeting.
My name is Ron Twining. I'm the Lorain County Community Development Director. We are holding today the first of two required public hearings concerning the potential establishment of countywide building codes. I'm presenting this information on behalf of the county to the residents, as well as today publicly to the Board of County Commissioners, of what we are intending to do. The purpose of today's meeting is to take questions and comments from those in attendance and allow an opportunity for the citizens to respond to us either today or at the next meeting, which is the 26th of September, another public hearing, or they can correspond with us if that's what they'd rather, to either the Board of County Commissioners or to our address, 226 Middle Avenue. With me today I have Rebecca Jones. Rebecca, when we get to the comments and question period, will come forward and help answer some of the questions that may be directed at us. Rebecca has been in charge of this project for our department. We are here today because, as a part of the 2000 Countywide Comprehensive Land Use Plan, the Intergovernmental Committee recommended, as a part of that plan, on page 43, those that have the land use plan, on page 43, the statement in there by consensus from that committee, townships should be encouraged to adopt building codes and that the county provide assistance in the administration with the coordination, or with a coordinated building inspection program, so as to minimize the administrative load that must be carried at the local level. It is advisable, the quote continues, that adopted building codes be uniform as possible to reduce confusion and reduce incentives to build in one location rather than another due to the favorable treatment with regards to codes and inspections. That was taken directly from the land use plan. It was based on that recommendation from those citizens that we moved forward over the last 2 years to get to today with a proposed set of building codes at the county level. The process that we've laid out establishes a building department at the county level, provided that a township would actually opt into it. The way we have established this is, and if Rebecca will go to the next slide, we are establishing or recommending that we create a district of the unincorporated areas of Lorain County for a county building code. And then we are asking, and I should go by this slide, but in order to get to this point today, I should have pointed out that the township trustees will have an option of passing a local resolution to opt into this district. If they do not want building codes in their township area, they simply do not pass a local resolution, and we technically could, in fact, have a county building district without any participation. We don't think that's the case. We think that there are probably at least 3 townships that will want to explore this possibility of a building department, but technically just by establishing the district does not force any township to have building codes. The last say, the last decision will be made at the local level by the township trustees, passing a local resolution whether to opt in or not to opt in to this building department. That's an important thing that we have heard loud and clear from the townships during a part of the land use discussions, and that's what we have built into this with the help and advice from the prosecutor's office and Mr. Ennis. One reason why we came to that conclusion, in 1999 I met with several residents as a part of the land use plan in Brighton Township. As many of you know, Brighton Township, the center is at the intersection of State Route 511 and 18. When we discussed building codes during those 3 meetings, one resident at the end of the 3rd meeting basically said to that audience that we have little development pressures in Brighton Township at this point, and according to the county's data, it appears Lorain County has at least 50 years before Brighton will see any real built-out criteria or development pressure. At that point, he suggested that Brighton Township and their trustees should in fact join the building code district, but wait 35 or 40 years when they really need to see the development pressure. In large part, that's what we've tried to do when we've put this program together. Places like Brownhelm that don't have very many houses being built and don't see the need for building codes do not have to accept that. On the other hand, places that are seeing development, Elyria Township, Eaton Township, Carlisle Township, Columbia Township, LaGrange Township, at least under this scenario as we're proposing it, will have the option to adopt a county building code rather than have nothing or adopt a building code from another city, one that is in place. This public hearing today in front of the public commissioners, we are saying that as a part of our building department, we are adopting the 1999 Ohio Building Officials Association codes. They're also known as the ABOA codes, OBOA, and I will refer to them from this point forward probably as the ABOA codes. You see the list here on the wall, and those of you that had handouts, there are handouts up here. If you'd like one, you can get those. It will talk about the various entities that make up the ABOA codes. You have the plumbing standards, the uniform building standards, you have standard gas codes, mechanical codes, so a lot of, and the electrical codes are all included in the ABOA codes. We had quite a discussion whether to adopt the 99 or 96 ABOA codes. We are recommending to the Board of Commissioners, if you establish this department, that you follow the 99 of building codes. One important thing to remember, and if you hear nothing today, please listen to this. We are suggesting, or this building department will only cover 1, 2, and 3 family dwelling units. Even the townships, currently you have commercial and industrial code requirements that are in place. This building department will have no effect, no impact on that as they are right now. This is only for 1, 2, or 3 family dwelling units. If you have a 4-family unit apartment or quadplex, that already is covered by the state's building codes. The only ones that are not covered by building codes in the townships are the 1, 2, and 3 family dwelling units. So that's what we're looking at here. We have up here, and it's a little difficult to read, it's even hard for me to read it here. On the computer screen it looks great, but this is the organizational chart that we have. There are really about 3 ways that building codes under the Ohio Revised Code could be set up. They could be set up under the county engineer's office, they could be set up under the county health district, or they could be set up under the county commissioners, either in one of their departments or as a brand new department altogether. After quite a bit of discussion, we are suggesting that the Board of Commissioners establish this under themselves, under the Board of Commissioners, at least temporarily. That would be housed in our department. And the only exception would be this potential plumbing inspector. That may, and we're still working on the details there, the plumbing inspection may in fact fall under the general health district if that's the wish of the commissioners, or it could remain with the building department as it's being established. In terms of how that department is set up, the county will be contracting with one building official to oversee consistency throughout all 18 townships. That will be a contract position, not a direct employee of the Board of Commissioners. We are suggesting in our proposal that and only that expense, the part-time building official, we're assuming 20 hours per week, that person will be paid from the county's general fund. That county building official will work directly under the Board of Commissioners and be housed in our office. They will coordinate all of the inspectors. The inspectors, on the other hand, will be paid directly out of the permits charged to the property owners, and there will be no contribution from the county's general fund to pay those. They too will be contracted employees or contract inspectors, not part of the general fund. So if there's no inspections to be done in January, there is no cost incurred by the county or any of the townships or property owners that are in the townships. Those inspectors need to be certified by the state of Ohio and hold licenses. Several will specialize in either a plumbing certification or electrical certification. A few may have multiple certifications. We have had the question when we met with the township folks in Eaton Township last February. The question came up, can the local township zoning inspector do inspections since they're already out doing some zoning inspections? The answer there is, provided that they hold the certification by the state of Ohio, yes. And we would do everything at the county level we can to get any local residents, local contractors, or local zoning officials certified in one or several of these fields. Our intent is, the way this will work best is the inspectors will cover a small region of the county. We don't want somebody having to come out of Avon or Columbia Township to do an electrical inspection in Rochester if they should join. So the intent is to try and keep those fairly close. The success and failure of this program is largely based on response time when a contractor calls or a property owner calls for an inspection. So we want to have local certified people if at all possible. Our building official at the county will simply take in those calls, the dates and times and type of inspection, and they will assign an official a building official to complete that inspection for that township where the inspection is called. We have specified in here that all inspections will be completed within 48 hours or less. Our hope is that they will be done the same day, but it's pretty standard, we understand, to say it has to be done within 48 hours. Some of those will be done within a matter of a half a day or so. I think the next slide. You went the wrong way. Keep going. We're going to the do's and don'ts.
Oh, okay.
The things that a building code can do, provide minimum requirements related to the control and design of a structure, the construction, prefabrication, installation of equipment and appliances, and the quality of materials within that house that's being built. And these are inhabited structures, not farm structures, not the uninhabited structures that we're talking about. The other thing that another thing that it can do is alleviate the potential negative impact of urban sprawl on an unincorporated areas, preserve the farmland. Third thing is provide unified building codes which promote development and quality houses by licensed contractors. And then the last item that we see as a plus to building codes is address floodplain management concerns We have had people, believe it or not, try to fill within the floodplains, and the best way legally to control the filling of a floodplain is actually through building codes. It's not through zoning codes. The things that building codes cannot do, it cannot usurp or override local zoning rules. Local zoning rules are expressly spelled out in the Ohio Revised Code, and they shall not be confused or in conflict with the building codes. Zoning will still be applied as it has been historically. It cannot be applied to existing structures. It cannot impact local commercial or industrial building regulations. As we said, those are already covered under the state's codes now. It cannot regulate modular or manufactured homes. It can, however, regulate the foundation that the manufactured home sits on. And lastly, it cannot regulate agricultural buildings or unoccupied buildings. So that's that part. At this point, I am willing to or ask that either the commissioners or anybody in attendance address any comments and issues, ask questions that they may have concerning this proposed building codes. We have not gotten into all of the aspects of the operation. We assume that will come up as a part of the dialogue. I will, before I close my comments, remind people that there will be a required second public hearing where some of these questions will be addressed that we can't address today. They come up. That second public hearing will be on September 26th in this room at the same time. That is required by the state law before the commissioners can even consider passing proposed building codes. If the general feeling is that we should move forward with building codes on the 26th, we likely will not ask that a vote be taken on that day. We assume that there will be further questions or comments that will need to be addressed. We are assuming at the earliest these would be passed by the commissioners or considered by the commissioners mid-October with an effective starting date of the 2nd of January 2003. That's the time frame that we are working on at this point, just so that everybody knows. At that point, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that unless the commissioners have some initial questions, you may want to open this up for comments and questions from the residents.
What I'd like to do is treat it similar to an annexation hearing probably, and have people speak for and against.
Okay.
But first, let's have, if there's any questions from the board first, is there?
No, I want to hear from the people first.
Not at this time.
Okay, why don't we do this? If I'm going to try to copy the format of an annexation hearing. So we'll have those that are against this format can please state your name and speak at the podium, just for our public record. So if there's anybody who'd like to make any comments against this proposal, please come to the podium now. Yes, please, if you're against this proposal.
I'm Dominic Maletti. I'm a member of the Lorain County Planning Commission. And one of the questions I'd like to ask first, Ron kind of defined whether the payment of the inspectors will take place, but he said it would come out of the fees. Well, that's probably enough to cover it, maybe or maybe not. But there's certain things I'd like to see, whether when people go out, you have like farm buildings, for example. They, by state law, they do not have to get a permit to be put up. But will this bring to the open that I suggest that these buildings be sent in a plan to the auditor's office so that they know they're in existence, and it wouldn't take 6 years to get back to taxing them. Now, some of the townships do have it where they have to submit a plan but pay no fee, which is according to state law. I'm in agreement with that. But as far as when we have zoning inspector, there's a lot of things get through that because of politics and cliques and stuff like that are never brought before the board and looked over very carefully. I can give you an example of a person who was putting in a storage unit and next to a residential. He was in a commercial area, and he wanted to be, and it was next to a residential. Now, he has to submit the plans to the zoning commission, then they, in turn, would look at it, because it's commercial, what the state has recommended. They also have to have a trees and shrubbery and everything else to block off that view from the commercial to the residential. And there's a lot of things that I can tell you in a township that's going on that are not being enforced. And if there's this, I'd like to see corrected.
Okay, when you're talking about correct, are you talking about the fact of like outbuildings that people are putting on that are not documented? Is that what you're talking about being corrected?
Well, I've seen that too already, where people have added on to house with never, and I've also seen it, I was on the appeals board a long time, and I was approached by different parties on how much it would take so they could stay in operation or do what they wanted. And I said, the best thing you better do is get back and correct what you're doing.
All right.
I would not, and I've seen the payoff done to a zoning inspector.
Okay. Ron, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, briefly, about 15 months ago, the county auditor's office, because this has in some locations been a problem, they've developed a 3-part form where the local zoning inspector has the applicant fill out a zoning request, and that is forwarded. One of those copies is forwarded automatically to the county auditor, and at that point, the appraisal is done and it gets into the system, and the county auditor watches for that. Certainly as a part of a building code, if we have that, that would be another check and balance on the system, but we would not be asking for building codes for non-inhabited structures. So you'd still go back to the local zoning code, and I think that in most places have been corrected.
My name is Robert Kish, and I formerly resided in a township. Mr. Maletti is 100% correct. A building went in a residential lot. It was a commercial building. It violated 7 tenants of the township that I read to the zoning board. Nevertheless, the building was allowed to be built and occupied and used as a business. It seems when I went to another meeting, this was in Elyria, I know what he is speaking about. There is such a thing as what they call selective enforcement. If you do not have the enforcement, if you do not have, how would I say, if the law applied equally, I have no problem. But when the law does not apply equally, then I have a problem. Thank you.
Okay. Ron? I'm going to ask you another question again. Ready?
Well, can I just...
Go ahead, make a comment.
I'll make a comment on that. That was one reason why those that we have worked with and had this discussion suggested that the county have the one building official to get that consistency, so that it did take it a little bit out of, you know, Uncle Buck going to the local, but that happens rarely. It happens, I'm sure, but that was what we were looking for at the county level, to have consistent enforcement throughout the unincorporated areas.
And it will probably stop anybody putting commercial property on residential zone property. Is that what you're saying?
In part, that's one thing that it should do, yes.
Okay. Does anybody else have any objections you'd like to state? Please come to the podium.
Don't forget to tell us who you are today.
I'll pass them out for you.
I will say that I'm Ken Prechtel from Carlisle Township. Last time I was at the podium, I forgot that. First of all, I'd like to thank the commissioners for letting us speak to the issue. And my special thanks to Mary Jo Vasey for sending out the survey to seek information regarding this matter. And I'd like to thank Betty for taking the time to chit-chat at the fair and she had other things on her mind. Carlisle's main concern is with the Ohio Revised Code 505.78. A copy of that's in your packet. If you look at it, it says if a Board of Township Trustees adopts a standard code under those sections, and the Board of County Commissioners in the county that the township is located, of course, adopts a policy, within 1 year, then the township's got to roll over and fall in line with the township policy. In August 1990, also in your packet, Carlisle Township signed on with the state of Ohio, and that we are a certified building department within the state of Ohio. A loose adoption of a policy without everything really being pinpointed could jeopardize Carlisle's standing in this this matter. Jerry Innes gave us a written opinion, and that's also included in your packet, that the commissioners were going to adopt that 307.37 through 307.40, which allows. Well, the two that I'm talking about right now are very contradictory. One says you can, and one says if you do, we get stepped on in the end. Just want to call these things to your attention because it's critical to our community, because we are progressive. Anyway, prior and since the time that all these took place, we've gone on and made progressive changes. In January 2001, the Carlisle Township Board of Trustees began a remodeling project at the town hall, and in April 2001, we hired a new department head for this office who is certified in the 1, 2, and the 3 family dwellings that are being considered here. We also have an assistant in that department who is qualified to handle a full-time workload of a building department. It would be our hope that the certification of the building department and hiring of the personnel qualified to run the department that the county is still mindful of our right to govern these issues, and not to put into place an establishment of a building code department. That would kind of prohibit us from attaining our goal, and that would, in my opinion, waste a lot of years of work and planning that we've put forth. We appreciate the position that Elyria Township is taking on the issue, but at the same time, we can also identify with Rochester and Pittsfield, Huntington and Camden's positions on the issue also. I did hear Mr. Twining speak to the fact that should have a 20-hour person that reports to the commissioners, handles the phone calls, and feeds out the permits. I don't think he's aware of the magnitude that this code would open as far as time consumption. As an example, in 1999, before Carlisle had a full-time building department, the fees collected for the year, and that would include all new construction, accessory buildings, pools, everything that we permit fee for, about $11,000 was received. This year to this date, since the establishment of our full-time department, the fees have increased to $39,000. we're in a period of growth, but when we created a department with a person that could be hands-on immediately to the general public, our part-time department no longer worked, and it necessitated a full-time employee with probably a 20 or 30-hour part-timer to assist. So when you're talking the 18 townships, a 20-hour county employee, no way, no how, could handle that kind of responsibility. Because in Carlisle, one single township, it requires a full-time person. Along with that, I would only ask that the commissioners consider and fully, intelligently research the conflicting statements in two separate sections of the Ohio Revised Code, because somewhere down the road, it would be entirely possible that somebody could find a little technical paragraph, and as we know how that happens, and turn everything upside down. I noticed in my agenda that you got a letter from the North Coast BIA informing the commissioners that they were reviewed and approved, but their concerns lie in the cost effectiveness, the quality and timeliness of the program, but they also applaud you for looking into this. I look at the cost effectiveness and the quality and the timeliness. I also appreciate Mr. Milletti's problem. If he had proof that there was a little payola going under the table, then he should have went to one of the prosecutors and reported it. Also, as I look through Prosecutor Innes's letter to us, assuring us under the 307.40 and 307.37 that one of the issues the commissioners need to decide is the enforcement method. It is permissible for the county to create a building department with employees within. It is also permissible for the counties to hire inspectors on an independent contractor basis. In closing then, I would ask and suggest a joint venture with the county and Carlisle Township on this issue, because we are prepared to do the 1, 2, and the 3, and we're also actively right now doing the state building on everything but the plumbing. We do have a state certified department, and before you considered hiring a lot of new personnel to go into an office of Mr. Twining, I would ask that the commissioners consider working with a community that already has these in place. Things that I have found, and I did hear about the fees and the fees that were questioned, we've had to address those very issues with a person that's presently doing some state work within our community. The way the state book reads and the way the local fees have been set up don't properly mesh, and the question that came to our community was, why did, if I went through the state, only have to pay this little, but because I went through you, we got to pay more? Well, the state, as if you look at the fee schedule, was kind of obsolete compared to today's needs. I mean, these are all things that have to be considered. It's not just easy to say, well, okay, we're going to charge $25 for a plumbing inspection and $85 for a electrical inspection, things like that. And there's no way that this board or the development department could set up by January 2003 and have a legitimate, effective fee schedule in place, unless the commissioners agree to possibly work with somebody that has been there and done that and still doing it. That's also a thing that has to be considered. It's just, and maybe by the next meeting in a couple of weeks, that some of these questions that we're putting forth can be addressed. But I'm in my 13th year on the Board of Trustees in Carlisle Township, and we have had 2 questions regarding building inspections. And they were both in single-family homes. One of the questions was regarding a crack in the poured wall of the basement that was allowing moisture to get in. That's not a building codes issue. And the other one was a deterioration of some lumber on the front porch. That is not a building codes issue. So in 13 years then, I guess what I'm saying, outside of those 2 isolated instances, we've not had any real complaints. And apparently that the system we're working under is good. I've also heard a comment from a gentleman in the audience that someone came in, got a permit for a addition, structural alteration, and ended up, was built on no foundation. That was, for lack of a better explanation, screwed to the ground, and then when somebody else bought it, why the problems came forth. Not to lay the blame totally on the person that told me that, but it's pretty lackluster, lackadaisical, whatever word that, can't figure out what word I want to use, but that doesn't happen in Carlisle. When somebody comes in for a structural alteration, they bring plans. And the plans are reviewed, and the plans are reviewed by a board of appeals. And then there are on-site visits to make sure that the plans are being adhered to. So I don't feel that someone should come to me because in the 60 years that I've lived on this earth, back when I was a kid, my dad put his arm around me and said, "Son, it's for your own good." My school teachers put their arm around me and said it was for my own good. Well, at 60 years old, I don't need a department putting their arm around me and my folks telling me it's for our own good. If the townships use the tools that are available and put the people in place that they can already put in place, they don't need a whole lot of help. But the cripples that are out there, if they need help, we will be glad to help. And we will be glad to work with the Board of Commissioners and the Lorain County Planning to offer our services rather than have a back turned on us that we can, we'll do it anyway. And at this point, quite frankly, it was a nice presentation, but what I saw in the presentation, in my opinion, was all gingerbread and no substance. So at that, I'll close. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions as a commissioner, as a Lorain County Community Development person, Carlisle Township is always available, a phone call away, that we can offer our expertise in this matter. Thank you.
Can you stay there a minute?
Yeah.
What do you pay your building inspector? What's the hourly?
He's presently was brought on because we didn't know what it was going to entail, so the first year was kind of vague. We're in the process of a salary review, but I would say we're looking in the area of a minimum of $25,000 a year in benefits.
Okay, I have the reply. One more question. The state, does the state put a cap on the fees that are charged, the permit fees or whatever fees?
No, that's the problem. See, they don't cap it. They just say what they're going to charge, and what a lot of the building people do then is, say on a smoke alarm system or a sprinkler system, and we ran into this issue with a person that was doing a commercial alteration, and the bill to review the plans and do the inspection, et cetera, you know, to get the go-ahead was in the area of $800. Well, he took the time to look into the ORC and state fees, et ceteras. They were vague enough to say it would be in the area of $3.25 a head. So then they go in, they count up all the heads that have gone in for the detectors or the alarm or the sprinklers, do the math, and say, well, hey, could have did all this for $325. You know, how come there's a $300 difference or $400 difference in the fee? Well, they didn't take into consideration that the plans had to go forth. They didn't take in consideration the fact that they'd had to go on to Akron at the closest or go to Columbus at the closest to have this taken care of, where it was took care of right here in Lorain, and they didn't have to drive the 160-mile round trip to Columbus and back to get the same permit. You know, they didn't factor in their expenses that they would have had they had to go downstate to do it. But there are other fees in that state building code that cloud the issues of local government trying to establish a fair and equitable fee. And kind of what we've done in Carlisle is we've put this department together, and by no means are we done with it, is make an effort to communicate with the city of Lorain to see how it's done. We have a person on site out in LaGrange that pretty well keeps us apprised of what's happening in that community. And then we're able to get comparisons. And what really set me to doing that type of thing was we had some employees that were in the middle of negotiating for a little pay raise, and they took the time to go out to all the other communities and see what people were getting for the same type of work, and then come back and make theirs to us. So I thought, well, hey, why not do this with building fees?
Yeah, you may have said this and I may have missed it, but is this a part-time position that you now have there, or is it a full-time?
We have one full-time and one part-time at this point, with plenty of room to grow. Up to the year 2000, we ran it kind of like some of the other communities that was a part-time out of someone's home, and the assistant was part-time and out of somebody's home, and the people couldn't connect.
Yeah.
And they were bothering our people at dinner time.
So this one full-time is $25,000 a year. That's
Yeah.
the wages.
Yeah, and then you have to look at the fringes,
Yeah.
et cetera, because just the health care, fully paid health care, in which we get our program through the county, if you're looking to match a figure there, you can add that to the thing. And that's only the temporary. We're going to have to reevaluate, because this person is licensed and this person is pursuing more license, that the greater the resume, then should also be the greater the pay. And I just don't feel that a qualified person could be attracted for a whole lot less than that. You know, you can't.
I'd like to read the reply from Carlisle Township. Thank you for the opportunity to express our views on the issue of the Lorain County Building Codes. Upon review of the working draft copy we received from you, we find this proposal unacceptable as presented, and state the following objections of why we will not support nor participate with the county in this endeavor. Number one, on page 89-2, under 89.03, Administration of Building Code, paragraph number 3, it states that the county may also contract on behalf of municipalities within the county to administer the code. We strongly object to this possibility. On page 6, under general provisions, heading creation, it states that this building department will be a division of the Lorain County Community Development Department. And under heading Building Official, paragraph A, it states he shall be responsible directly to the Director of the Lorain County Community Development Department. We strongly object to this and feel this should be a new department with responsibility only to the county administrator. Number 3, on the draft budget page, it states estimated income from fees at approximately $1,000 per new home. Is this to be a revenue for the county? If so, we strongly object to this idea. We need to see final and accurate fee amounts established. Also, under expenses, it states that the budget is based on the hiring of 1 building official and 6 inspectors. Your cover letter states in paragraph 1 that this proposal suggests the county hire an additional 1 to 2 county employees, a part-time inspector, and 1 other person. This needs to be clarified. Have those questions been answered when Ron spoke?
No, because Ron, number one, he said, well, we could, casually said we could do it with a 20-hour employee working under, and then he hesitated there, put it under the county planning or put it directly under the commissioners. There's a little bit of vagueness involved there, and that's another thing that Carlisle's not into Empire Building. I think that there's a lot of dialogue that's got to take place. I would say that in 2003 January we could still be kind of talking about this, because right now, as I said, it's a lot of gingerbread and there's no real substance there. The $1,000 per new home, is that going to net in that $1,000 on all the plumbing, the electrical?
Right.
You know.
Or is there going to be additional fees after
Right.
the $1,000? And not only that, but will that $1,000 cover the wages
Right.
for the inspectors?
Right, and the last thing that the county commissioners need to do is create another agency with a lot more salaries, PERS, et cetera, et cetera, without at least giving it a whole lot more consideration than we're going to be able to give it in 2 hearings.
Okay, I'd like to personally thank Carlisle Township and all the other townships that replied. We had 61% responded to the survey. And I'll take time after everybody has their opportunity to speak to let you know how the survey turned out.
But anyway, in closing then, I suggest that the county and Carlisle sit down and work on a joint venture on this issue. And I want to tell Commissioner Moore, we're not really anti-anti as it may sound, but I think there's a whole lot of unanswered questions and a lot of territory that need a whole lot further research, particularly on the commissioner's side of the table, because it's easy for people to come in and influence you with a lot of smoke and mirrors, but you're going to have to do a lot of personal research here too to see how you're going to impact 18 townships in the county, because the cities and the municipalities and the et ceteras are all taking care of themselves already. So basically what you're doing is jumping into the lifestyle of township residents. And I'm not to say that maybe some areas of the county and the townships might need a little help. But I would think that the proactive townships, and there's 4 large ones in the northern part, and that would be Columbia, Eaton, Carlisle, and Elyria, and maybe even throw Amherst in there, that their needs and their abilities to handle situations could be a whole lot different than the person that does live in Brighton that has a question that it's not going to affect me for 50 years. But if it doesn't affect him for 50 years, let's make sure today, or when this is enacted, that we're making the right decision for 50 years from now. Maybe 50 years from now, a bunch of us are not going to be here. They may be living in one of those glass houses, growing a little bit of vegetation and all that stuff we see on Star Trek. So thank you very much for your time and letting us speak in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
The comments that trustee Practical has made, I agree with, other than maybe the smoke and mirrors. We do think we've done due diligence. There is still refinement to take place. We acknowledge that, and we will continue. That's why we've said in large part we don't see this realistically taking effect any before January 2nd. We are shooting for that date. We understand that there are basically three options for a township to establish building codes. The first is if the county has a building department or a building code district, then the individual townships can accept that county code. The second way is if a township wants to, they can take an existing municipal building code and adopt those in its entirety. Certainly, it sounds like that's what Carlisle Township has done, and that certainly is suitable to us. The third option would be one that Mr. Practical talked quite a bit about at the end, and that is the county, rather than establishing its own building department, either in us, the General Health District, or the county engineer, they may want to consider either allowing the township to have its own hired zoning official, or actually, as he said today, contract directly with them. We're willing to take that and explore that as a possibility. We've had several conversations with in-house on just that, so I don't take any exception to any of the comments that Carlisle Township has made. That's why we're having this public hearing, to get just those things. If Lorain County is going to pass a building code, they need to make sure it's one for the areas that they want it in a format that they want, so we're willing to accept that. The other comment about the part-time employees and situations like that, I would just remind the commissioners that our budget was making the assumption that someplace between 3 and at most 7 townships, and we think the number really is 3 to 5, will opt into this. There are at least 13 that are going to wait 50 years or wait 3 years before they opt in. So one thing that we did not want to do was hire employees for whatever scenario and then have them not have townships that will need service. That's why we're going with a contract employee, and starting out on the light side, we waited to see, or are hoping to wait and see, how many townships would elect to participate. I don't want to represent to the public or to the commissioners that all 18 are going to do that, because that's not the case. If we can start with 3, that would be great, and if one of those 3 is Carlisle and they've done their own thing, we are not wanting to jeopardize what they've done. They've gotten off to a great start. We support that.
I don't think that's our concern. I think the concern is once we pass this legislation, it doesn't matter. We could come in and just overtake them. I mean, I think that's what Ken was referring to when he showed us the resolution.
I think Jerry wants to comment on that.
I saw him going for it, but I think that's what he was going to. I think that's what the issue was. Okay. If you don't mind, Jerry.
Okay. There's 2 ways that this can work in the way that the commissioners adopt a resolution. You can adopt a resolution that forms one county-wide district, and if you did something like that, then Mr. Prechtel is correct. That would wipe out all the individual township building departments and their regulations. The second option you can do is in effect adopt smaller districts, and that's what the proposal is. Instead of one big district covering the entire county, we're going to form a district in each individual township that elects to participate, so that these regulations will only apply in those districts where it participates, in those districts where the townships pass a resolution to be part of it. So that way we will avoid that impact of wiping out everything there is. So the district that this applies to will only be the townships that pass a resolution saying we want to be in the district. And the only thing a bit unusual we're doing is we're trying to do this so that we don't have to do a public hearing. Let's say 2 or 3 townships right off the bat say we want to be in this district. And then we say, okay, that's our district, those three townships. You can do it one of 2 ways. Then you can then have public hearings every time a new township wants to come in. We can go through the public hearing process each time. The way this is formatted, we would not have to do a new public hearing every time a new township wants to enter. They would just enter, become part automatically by passing a resolution. But those are an option that is up to the town, up to the commissioners.
So if we do a county-wide, we don't have to have the public meetings every time, right?
Well, we don't want to do a countywide,
Right,
any way,
okay.
shape, or form, because he's right, that would
Wipe out.
automatically wipe
All right.
out. What we're going to do is form districts, and you can form districts.
They could be, each township could be its own individual district,
Right, each
correct?
township could be its own individual
With
district.
the city being its own district, and they already
Well,
have their own. You know what I'm
cities
saying,
are
I
just
know.
unincorporated areas.
Okay.
So each township would be its own district?
Right.
Or you can have 2 or 3 in one district?
Right, but I think because we also want to leave the option to the townships to get out, we probably want to keep it to each individual township as a district. And so we have changed the language a little bit, and thanks to the comments of Carlisle and the input from Gary Crane there, we've modified the language in this to make sure we don't accidentally preclude the individual townships. So we're trying to set it up to do just exactly as Ken has asked. If Carlisle Township is interested, but they want to look at this a longer period of time, they want to see how this works with 1 or 2 of the townships that joins in, this will give them the chance to take a look at it and then perhaps come in later on if they don't want to. We also are trying to format it so there's going to be really 3 different ways that each township can work. A township can choose to just stay out of this altogether. They can choose to join in and have the county be totally responsible for enforcement. Or the third option is just exactly as Ken has indicated. We work with the individual townships to see what extent they want to do the enforcement locally and what extent they want to do it through the county. Now, the one catch to that is you do have to have one person ultimately in charge of the department, and that's this one employee that Ron is talking about. You do have to have one person who, in effect, supervises all of the inspectors. So even if we go into each township and say, all right, whoever you want to be the inspector on the township level will use, there's still going to have to be
Someone to
reporting
answer
to the central guy. So that's kind of how we're trying to set it up.
But yet, every time, if we do it individually by districts, we would need a public hearing for new ones.
That's what I'm saying. You have an option to decide. We're trying to set it up so that you don't have to go through all these public hearings every time one township wants to join in. You can do it like that if you want to. In other words, you can say, we'll find out which 2 or 3 want to join right now and form that, and then every time somebody else wants to join, we'll have new public hearings. You can set it up like that, or you can set it up so that it will just happen automatically. That's
How do you
something-
set it up so it's going to happen automatically?
Well, by setting it up in the resolution that all it takes for the townships to join is for them to pass a resolution.
Oh, for them to pass it, okay. All right, thanks.
Ken, you want to add something?
What I'd like Mr. Ennis to do would be to supply us the verbatim out of the Ohio Revised Code that he just quoted, because it's questionable if we can end up with 18 districts in the county. And kind of the way he said it was each township question was asked of him, that each township could become a separate district. And I just, for our own protection and et cetera on it, I'd like to have Mr. Ennis open dialogue again with Gary and supply him with the, more than just yanking a couple quotes out of the air. Because we're not anti. We are more of in protecting ourselves and our autonomy in this the thing, and hopefully we brought enough questions to light that the other townships that are involved will ask the same thing to.
Well, your experience with it should help us.
Sure, well, you know.
Yeah, and
Thank
Gary
you.
was very helpful.
Well, thank you for recognizing that. I appreciate that, Mary. But these are just issues that had to be brought forth. But I don't want anybody in the room to think that we are trying to build a wall around Carlisle and be anti-anti. We just want to be very careful.
I don't see that happen. I don't hear that at all. That's okay. We don't hear that. I see this more as a dialogue with everyone.
Quite frankly, the comments they made were very good, and that's the whole idea of having these hearings, is so that we can get the input from the townships. And the other thing Ken said is maybe 2 hearings is too short. That may be the case. The law requires 2 hearings. If after the second hearing there are still more questions that come up that we still need to investigate, we can have more hearings.
Well, that's good to hear, really, because whatever we do here today, or 2 weeks from today, or 6 weeks from today, is going to impact the next 50 years or so, and that's where the growth is coming, and we recognize that the rural areas are. And once you guys get off dead center and help us with our sewers, we're sitting probably on 1,000 homes that want to come to Carlisle Township. Thank you.
I think we're
We
moving.
accept petitions at any time,
I think,
Trustee
I just had to
Brechtel.
get that jab in there.
I think
My response is we accept petitions at any time.
I think we're off dead center now, wouldn't you say, Mr. Cortez? Yeah. I think we're moving right along.
Jerry, is my understanding correct that the regulations take effect on the 31st day after the adoption?
Yes, right.
But we don't have to adopt this for...
Right, you don't
Yeah,
have to.
but I
you
mean,
don't have
after
to-
we adopt it,
Yeah,
it's
but we-
31 days
You
after
don't
they
have to
take
vote.
effect.
It's not like annexation where there's a deadline as to, you
Yeah,
don't
but
have
you're saying
to
that.
vote after the second
Right.
hearing. And like I said, you could, as long as, this is the first step that we have to take to formally
Right.
consider it. And although I don't think any of us want to have a year's worth of hearing here, Ken's right, this is not something that needs to be rushed into just to get it done.
Okay. Come on up to the podium, please.
There's one thing I'd like to recommend for the township that do not wish to get into it, that the officials, the zoning inspector, do not hold, I should say, go to the town hall or a public building so that they could, a person could meet them there, but do not have it in their own home, because there's a big conflict when they have it at their own home.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments against? Okay, sorry about that. How about, okay, let's hear some comments supporting the issue. Would everybody please come to the podium and support?
Yeah. Gene Spansky, you want me to spell my last name?
Yes, please.
S-Z-C-Z.
Is it?
It's on now.
It's on.
It-
Do you have anything up here that works?
Yeah, right there, it works.
My name's Gene Spansky, S-Z-C-Z-E-P-A-N-S-K-I. I will not repeat that. I'm a township trustee of Eaton Township. You know, we're living in the 21st century, and I think it's time that the county quit pushing that chain down the road. Let's get things going. Ron, I would like you to get contact with Medina County. Now, Medina County's had a county-wide building code for years. I would say at least 45 years. get some ideas from there. Mr. Prechter from Carlisle, I was surprised that they had their own inspection team, but it must be nice to be rich. Rich townships. But I mean, actually, like Ely Township, I wouldn't see any problem working with Mr. Prechter. You know, they're next door neighbors. We try to get along with everybody. I think we do have a lot of groundwork to do, but I think everybody's on the same page, so let's keep moving ahead. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hi, Ron Schwalkenwald, North Coast BIA. You want me to spell Schwalkenwald for you?
Yes, please.
S-C-H-W-A-C-H-E-N-W-A-L-D. Thank you. I'm with the North Coast BIA. Our codes committee and then our board reviewed this very carefully with Ron and Rebecca being present and identifying what I's need to be dotted and what T's need to be crossed. And one of the elements we talked about was within the BIA, and we cover 3 counties, most of the issues that come to us as far as complaints from the communities are from areas where there is no code affected. And the impact is simply an individual, whether it be a guy or a gal that's calling the office, what is my remedies if in fact, and I'll give you a war story and we'll go on from that, if in fact I built this house, paid for it, they've gone back down to the auditor's office to file a lien against me, it's all paid for, how do I take care of that? There's no vehicle right now to facilitate that, to include if the construction is poor. So what we're looking at, and what we looked at that was paramount as far as the BIA is concerned, is safe and affordable housing. Within the 77 communities that we work in, well, just in Lorain County, all the cities already have that. They also have an Ohio Board of Inspectors, a local organization, association that gets together on at least a monthly basis and talks about these issues. We have our codes committee, and all the townships and the cities are invited to that too. The last one we had quite a few inspectors. Ron was there. And we talk about the issues you run into in the field. So everything being equal, yes, it is good for the people if the people understand it. And each organization, each community is its own little, I like to call them sandboxes, I guess. And there's peculiarities within that sandbox as far as the way you're going to run your organization. One of the things that Ron and I had dialogue with, and Becky, was putting a test program together. That gives them 18 months to 2 years to physically work out the dollars, the process. We can get Carlisle Township, the contractors, to come in and help facilitate that. And there may be times when you have a production schedule, as we do in Lorain County now, thank God we're doing very well in the building industry, where you're going to have to pile on, whether it's the city of Lorain where they hire contract inspectors, or if it's Avon or it's North Ridgeville now, where predominantly a lot of buildings going on. You have to facilitate that, and you have to have a grab bag of cash that's going to be available to do that. In the majority of counties that have a program set up, or a city like that that had set up, their dollars usually cover it. Ron talked about $1,000. I can think of townships where you can probably get a house permitted here at about $175. I can take you to Avon, where probably at the end of the permitting stream it's cost you about, before you even build the first stick, about $7,000. So that's why I say each community has to take this and measure it very carefully. Now, is growth coming? I think it's coming. And where does it start? At the western end of Cuyahoga County, and as it comes into Lorain County, all of us set the last 5 or 6 years watching the growth, and it's phenomenal. We'll probably start 1,600 homes in Lorain County. That's my projection now, for this year, for this fiscal year. And if the economy stays as it is, and people want to move, and I don't know how you stop them from moving, you'll have that next year too. So the projections that the county put out of about 30,000 homes in 15 years sits right in there. Now, management of that, making it work right, and then paramount is the safe and affordable housing that we'll need out there. Working together is great. And I know all the township folks. I've been to most of the places, sat in all the meetings, and I know they have issues that are different than the city of Elyria, or Carlisle has different issues than the township of Huntington. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ron. Anybody else have any comments?
My name is Greg Abraham. I'm a trustee for Brown Elm Township. we've only have a little less than 2,000 residents. I have some concerns, and one of the concerns I would have is when a person wants to build a home, they have to go get a zoning permit from their local township, and then they're gonna have to turn around and go to the county for a building permit. That's like paying double for going to the city and getting a building permit. Okay, now, Ron mentioned that the building department, the county building department, would also get involved in so-called urban sprawl. Now, to me, that's a zoning issue for the township itself. I don't know how that gets into the building code. Okay, as a trustee for Brownhelm, to me, it would be more important for the builders that go into the townships to make sure that they are building to code, that they're licensed, and that they're bonded, so if there is a problem, the homeowner can go back on the contractor through the bond and take care of their problems. Okay, I had a question for Ken. Is Ken still here? When you formed your building department, did you eliminate your zoning inspector?
No, because the building inspector, the way it's set up is also in the position issuing zoning permits.
So, did you charge them also a zoning fee and then a building permit fee?
No.
Okay, so,
What we have done there is, we've adjusted our building permits are based on square feet. We build a 1,500 square foot house,
Which is fine.
pay a little less than the guy that built a 5,000 square foot house. It's all based on square footage.
yeah, that's what Brownhelm does. We charge so much per square foot.
Another additional thing we have on there is the parks fee that we're also, at this point, recognize that with more people, they want more recreation. So we have added, not necessarily a park impact fee, but we have added a fee that's for the parks and the green space that most contractors try to buy out. You know, and, anyway, our building department runs under, our building inspector. He could go / zoning inspector, but we prefer to leave that part out of it. And he oversees the zoning department and the zoning board of appeals.
Now, if Carlisle Township would become part of Lorain County Building Department, you know, would you still charge a fee and then the county charge a fee?
If we were to be the administrator of the,
Well, you're gonna have to pay the county regardless. I don't think the county will let the township collect the money and still be part of the county building program.
No, Greg, I think what he's saying is that they're gonna have their own building department, it won't participate in the county. So it'd
Okay.
be separate fees, so I think that's what they're referring to.
So in other words, all their growth will not come into the revenue of the county to
Correct, it
support.
would stay within the community itself.
So you're gonna put a bigger burden on the smaller townships then,
No,
to cover the overhead of the building department.
yeah, I mean, it's like anything else.
Well,
You're gonna have
yeah, I
18,
understand, but-
You're gonna have 18 or you're gonna have 2, you know?
Right,
You know,
right.
no, you're right there.
So, and they're one of the bigger townships. Now, if a
Ken.
smaller township,
Oh, Ken's been talking, and yeah. Yeah, that's all. It's just hard for us to hear you when you're back there, so. Thanks.
no, as far as that question, it was a legitimate question. And when I suggested that Carlisle be a participant with the county in the program, and that we could offer our expertise, I didn't mean at that time, to answer the question, to make it look like we're trying to profiteer on it. We have the same concerns that the other townships have, and if we're involved, then it would be the way, when it came to some kind of a fee schedule, we certainly would want to set with the concerned people and work on the fee. And I would prefer that it would be a fee based on very nominal amount to just to defray cost. You wouldn't have to do any real inspecting on the initiation of the 1, 2, 3. Where the inspection come in would be on the plumbing and the wiring and those things. A reputable contractor is comfortable enough going into a community knowing what's going on. I think BAI's biggest concern, and it is a concern to us, is that we have a lot of contractors, and if you turn on your TV at night, you read the horror stories. They operate out of their pickup trucks. When we run into a questionable situation like that, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes before the permit is issued. I'm not at liberty to explain it all because I'm quite not sure myself, but I do know that when Rain Tree comes in and Yost comes in, Calvin Smith, these guys have built all over the county, but we do question when somebody comes in just to stick build a house that they're doing it out of a van and a pickup truck. And this is not only a concern to the BIA, but it's a concern to, should be a concern to everyone. But as far as a fee schedule, it would never be set up that it would rape the communities that use the service.
One other question for Ken. Do you license the contractors in your township?
No,
Are they bonded?
they're bonded and insured. We're presently researching into that because our problem is the township is we're limited in some of the agencies that we do set up and where we have to go through certain channels. So this could be a blessing in disguise and we don't even know it, but I just feel it deserves more attention than it looked like it was going to get. And I think after today, why we're really all on a different page.
Okay, one question that I would like to get answered is if a smaller township would get involved with Lorain County building codes, would they still collect a zoning permit fee from the homeowners and also the county collect a fee?
You mean a zoning permit fee?
Building permit.
I think
Well, no,
we'll
it'd be a
let,
building permit fee.
let's let Ron Twining answer this one.
And I may have Rebecca answer this fully, but we are not going to do building inspections and have all taxpayers of Lorain County subsidize that. We will charge building fees, make no mistake about that. Whether it comes into the coffers of the county and generates funds for the county, it is not intended to. What we are doing is cost recovery and get those money back out to the contracted inspectors. We are subsidizing the building official to coordinate this for consistency with all county taxpayers paying it, and it will only be a service provided to those townships that opt into this building department. But the money in fees will be used to pay the actual inspectors. It's not a profit motive for the county or anybody else. Our hope is that if we're generating on average $1,000 per household, we will have $1,000 in expenses for the various inspections that will be conducted.
Thank you.
Would there be a possibility, say, for example, in Brown Elm Township, we got a homeowner that goes and gets a zoning permit, asks the zoning inspector, yes, I would like to get involved with the Lorain County Building Program so I have my home inspected and make sure everything's done properly. Could that be an option of the homeowner?
I don't think so. No.
No, the one requirement is that it be handled uniformly within every district that it's handled. No, you can't, no, there's no way to do it individually by homeowner request.
So it's pretty much that the township would either have to go along with whatever the county sets up, and that would be bottom line.
Right.
If the township wants to opt into a township building code, yes, they would go with the county's regulations. However, the township still has the other option of going with another municipality. If Brownhelm wanted to adopt the Vermillion building codes and not be a part of the county, they could do that. If they wanted to adopt Lorain's or Amherst, they could do that. They could adopt Medina County's codes if they wanted to do that. So that's the only exception everybody needs to be aware. But if they opt into the counties, they have to follow the county's regulations, which are the ABOA codes.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. You know, this is one of those issues that's kind of tearing me up a bit, because one, I don't like to see the unincorporated areas with no regulations, because you do have the truck and ladder guys out there building things they should not be building. There's nobody seeing that. But then I have the view of another level of bureaucracy that could just, you know, really hinder everybody, and then you got Big Brother coming down on the townships telling you what you're going to do when some are doing and some are not. So I'm at a point where we've been talking now for an hour, almost an hour and a half, and I don't see any headway, except people are communicating here today. And I almost feel like maybe that should have been done before we had, or maybe is that what you're saying? Well, okay,
It was.
okay. But I don't see, I can't, I guess what I'm looking for is a resolution to this issue.
Well, I think you'll get a resolution as you hear more discussion.
More discussion, okay. I just don't see, I guess the statement's already made, 2 public hearings, it's not going to get a resolution.
That's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
I'm Ernie Walker, trustee in Eaton Township. As I understand it, first I'll make a statement that we desperately need some kind of building code. I mean, we've looked at Medina next door to us. Lorain County has been sitting here. We were one of the last 8 counties out of the 88 in this state to adopt a floodplain plan. Let's get up and start moving forward a little bit, because I had a builder tell me that he can build a house in Cuyahoga County for $8,000. His comment was, I put $8,000 in my pocket building in Lorain County versus building in Cuyahoga County. And that $8,000 that goes in his pocket is because he doesn't pay any permit fees and has no inspections. I'm not saying he's a shoddy builder, but when you're going to build 50 houses at $8,000 a piece you can stick in your pocket, you might be tempted to skimp a little bit wherever you can. We look at the whole thing as being equal. If it costs him the same amount of money to build in Cuyahoga County or Lorain County, then it's not just run across the county line and throw something up and shoot and scoot. The kind of people we don't want and we're going to wind up with expansion is more of the shoot and scoot people, because there's no regulation. There's nothing to hold them to a regulation. Now, I don't know what kind of code Mr. Prechtel adopted, but my understanding of Ohio Revised Code is that we can adopt any city code that we want as long as we change not one word in that code. Is that correct, Ron?
That's my understanding.
So we can adopt Illyria's code. Then we have to hire all the inspectors. Mr. Moore is concerned about another layer of bureaucracy. The whole idea of using contract inspectors eliminates that bureaucracy. You don't have somebody that you're paying a wage plus hospitalization is $3 an hour. You know?
Oh, yeah.
That's $24 a day that you're paying whether they work or not, just for their hospitalization. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to say, just like with the electrical inspections today, and has been in effect for many, many, many years, you call the electrical inspector, he comes in, he inspects your house, you pay him. The difference is you're going to pay it into a pot like we do with our commercial zones, the inspectors. At the present time in the townships, if you're building a commercial building that requires sprinkler systems and all of the other things that a commercial building requires, you have to go through a commercial building inspector. All the townships, I think, have a contract to take care of that. It's when we get down into the residential homes that we have no protection for the residents and your constituents, I might add. There's no protection for them because there is no code. If the county would adopt a code operated whether it's under whichever department, you need one central person to have, that we can call and say, we have a house that's going to be built. Our zoning inspector would contact them and get the permits and the fees and get everything set up at the time that it's all set up. I don't even see why we cannot go through, the zoning inspector cannot still be the first contact on this. And if a zoning inspector is still the first contact, then the township still has first knowledge of what's going on, and then some control over what's going on. But I am all for the code. As I said, I want the law to apply equally to everyone. And I want to get away from substandard building. I want the people to have an honest house when they walk in. And thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you for your comments. Anybody in support?
Oh,
Sorry.
can I just make a comment, please, Commissioner, in response to Ernie, and because I've heard this several times, question about zoning permit. One of the things that will be required when somebody comes for a building permit is their zoning permit from the township. So we will not be issuing building permits prior to them having a zoning permit in hand. So that if they do come to us, they'll get sent back to the township to get their zoning permit. We're not trying to override the local zoning laws at all. We're simply trying to offer another level for townships that would like it as far as quality construction in their townships.
And that's what I'm hearing. It sounds like, I mean, we're at a point where some townships want it and some don't. And I think Jerry made the point that we need to talk some more regarding the language. Is that what about an hour ago you said?
Right, I'll certainly be glad to discuss with any township the language.
So, no, please, I mean, that seems like that's a major issue, correct?
Certainly needs to be clarified.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I think, in my opinion, there's a little confusion that's reigning here. Somebody comes to our department and they want to build a house on lot 943 at 1066 Russia Road. Our zoning department looks at the size of the lot by the plot map that's supplied through the auditor's office. And then a building permit is issued accordingly.
Excuse me,
plan-
Ken, is it a building permit or a zoning permit?
It's a building permit.
A building permit for a
It's
residential piece of property?
Right, it's issued through our zoning department, and we have a fee for that.
When did you initiate a building department in Carlisle Township?
About at the year 2000, January 2000, the three trustees and I started talking about it, and then in April, we instituted it.
Thank you.
April of 2000?
Yes.
Okay.
But when we issue that permit, it's not issued as a zoning permit. They just merely go to the zoning department to get the permit. I thought, and maybe I'm not even reading this right, that when you talk about a county building code, if you go into the city of Elyria, the city of Avon Lake, the city of Vermillion, and I had experience personally in Vermillion and Avon Lake, that foundation goes in, the rough end goes up, and then the electricians come in, or the heating air conditioning guys, depending on the season, come in and put in a furnace. And then at that point, they call for an inspection, that the city inspector or municipality's inspector comes out at that point and looks at the progress and says, well, okay, the wiring is, but you're missing one outlet on this wall and you need a extra outlet at that light switch. And then the contractor goes ahead and he does that. And then the inspector comes back to make sure it's right, and then he authorizes at that point for the drywall to go on, or the insulation to go in. I don't see where, at the very beginning of the process, a county building code would have a whole lot to do with it. The code would,
Well, can I interrupt you here? I think when you said, when your zoning board issues the building permit, is that what your township passed a resolution to do that, in that format?
yeah, a long time ago.
Okay, well then, I think what they were referring to, and help, correct me if I'm wrong, is that not all the communities are gonna do that. I think some of them are gonna basically just do the zoning, and then they're gonna have to come to the county to get a building permit. So it's just, that's the next step, that's all. So I think,
Okay, well, I
think
got
you're
lost
fine.
I got lost in all this. I just
No, I know,
was,
you start going
I
on
thought when you
farther.
get into
Yeah, I don't
the
wanna go-
detail of the construction project, that's where the inspections start to take place,
Right,
to
but I
make
don't
sure that
think-
we're all getting the same wiring, and we're all getting the same type of plumbing, and even the
Well, making
inspection
sure
that...
everything's up to code and everything's
Right,
done properly, which I think
right,
we're
and-
okay with Carlisle Township. but I
And the
think-
biggest problem in most homes is the location of a lot of the utility access
Okay.
things, the plugs where the
Right.
GFIs have to be and stuff like
Right,
that.
but I don't think we're gonna have
And
an
if
issue.
you don't have it, you never
Right,
can
right. I don't
place
think
it.
we're gonna have an issue with Carlisle, though. I think it's the other people that are standing behind you probably want to speak to, so.
Well, I didn't, I'm not trying to hog center stage here, but I think there was a lot of little questions, and I agree with the person
No,
that
I
just
agree
left
with you.
here,
Right.
that some of these people should have read the information that they received regarding all this, and some of the questions that we're hearing today wouldn't even be asked.
Right.
And
No, I
we are
agree.
going to, at the next association meeting, get it on the agenda to have an educational platform to get some people up to speed, maybe that missed whatever they needed to see.
Right. Okay, thanks. I hope I answered that for you.
My name's Rob Scheitauer. I'm an Elyria Township trustee, and I'm representing our board today from Elyria Township. We are in favor of this county building code. We will initiate, hopefully, after the election. We are worked out a contract with the city of Elyria for a JED program, and it'll be on the ballot November 5th for our residents to determine that if we go into a contract, and if we do, we will implement some type of building code, and we're hoping we can implement the county building code. And thanks to Jerry, we're this far, and we got it on the ballot, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
I'm Dale Rundle from Columbia Township. Thanks to Mary Jo's questionnaire, the trustees did get a chance to talk about a county building code amongst ourselves and with our township residents at the meeting that we received that. And our indications were that it would be the best for Columbia Township if we would go with a building code. I believe that the county should adopt a code. Now, when you talk about enforcement, when you start talking about charges, those things I believe can be remedied. After we have a code, then we can see what townships want to come in. We can let those townships come in. Then we can sit down with a board and iron out some of these problems that everybody's going to have now. Because to me, I don't think we should be bothering the commissioners with all this bickering now. We should come with a plan. And Ron started this in North Eaton. But the problem is, we have to get a code. Then we get the personnel on board, or the townships. Then we can come together with a plan and ask for your support then. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that.
Good afternoon. My name's Ken Roth, trustee from Columbia Township, and I would like to echo Dale's sentiments that we in Columbia Township are in favor of adopting this building code. I think I would like to commend you for considering it. I'd like to commend Ron for his hard work at this point. I think it addresses some of the issues we've heard here today with protecting the autonomy of the more rural townships who don't need it, also protecting the autonomy of a township such as Carl that have initiated their own. However, I think there's great economy and scale that would benefit the townships, and with the help of the county, we would be able to administer a building code effectively and even-handedly across the county, and I would appreciate you taking that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Anybody else like to speak in favor of the building code?
Good afternoon. My name is John Brandt. I'm not a resident, so I'm an outsider. You may not want to listen to me. I'm from the Ohio Board of Building Standards. We don't have jurisdiction over 1, 2, and 3 family dwelling houses. We do over commercial. The reason I came is because Ms. Jones contacted me about 6 weeks ago and wanted to ask me some questions about the personnel. And I sort of volunteered to come up. I would speak highly in favor of building codes. First of all, I think Mr. Twining and Jerry did an absolutely outstanding job in outlining what 307.37 of the revised code says. You have a right to create districts, and you have a right to put any areas within the county into those districts, or you could include the whole county, as he said. But you can limit it to townships, you can limit it to a part of a township, as long as you clearly define what the geographical boundaries of the district are. Now, I had a couple comments that I would like to make. First of all, I brought you a copy of a study that my board was mandated by the legislature to make back in 1998. It's called An Acceptable Degree of Risk, a study of Ohio building standards law, and it was actually done by an outside consultant who is with the College of Urban Affairs at Cleveland State University, Patricia Burgess. But she did really an outstanding job of analyzing what the situation is within the state of Ohio right now. And that is, as many of the witnesses have said, we have about 44 counties that actually have building codes. The other 44 do not. There are only a few townships. In fact, your townships here are to be commended in that they've set up building departments. I think 15 of the 18 certified commercial township building departments are in this county. But why is it really important for you to have residential codes? One of your witnesses hit it right on the head, and that is because homeowners a lot of times don't get what they pay for. I spend probably about 25% of my time fielding phone calls to which I have to tell the person the state of Ohio has no jurisdiction because we don't regulate 1, 2, and 3 family dwelling houses. I don't get that many calls out of your county. I can remember 2 in particular that I did, both of them out of Columbia Township. One dealt with how the electrical installation was done in a new home. And it was done in such a way that the heating system and also the air conditioning system did not properly operate. Now, the only recourse that that homeowner had was to litigate the matter, and I don't know if they ever did or not. They had tried to get the builder to make the corrections. The builder refused to do that. The other one I had was one of the more strange things that I think I've dealt with, and it was over the type of glass that had been used. And the homeowner was concerned. She had to replace most of her glass because it broke. And most building codes define a certain type of glass that are to be used in windows. She actually was conducting a crusade because she knew in the development that she had that other homeowners had purchased the same type of glass in their buildings. And she wanted to try and get all the glass replaced. Well, of course, there was no building code that made enforcement in that area, so they could not really know if the proper glass had been put in or not. So that is the major reason that you ought to adopt. I think that your approach is the approach that's been outlined by Mr. Twining is a very good approach. Only have those townships that wish to be involved in it. That lets the other ones have the autonomy. Actually, you're putting it back on the Board of Trustees to make the decision. Now, some of the things that were said this morning are problems that are created, where people have misunderstanding, are problems that are partially created by our legislature rather than you. One of them is in zoning. The person who testified about permit to build, he's absolutely correct. That is what they have to call their permit once it's issued. It's a permit, and they call it building permits. It's actually a permit to build. It's not the same thing that is a building permit. The one is for land use, how that piece of land is supposed to be used, whether it's going to be used for industrial, residential, some type of light commercial business or something like that. The building code is actually how a building is going to be constructed. It gives the standards to which the building is going to be constructed, not how the land is going to be used. And that is really, again, where we have so many consumers, and mostly in the rural areas of the state where no building codes have been adopted. And that's probably only about 30% of the population. But that alone is one reason I would encourage you to adopt a code and then let the townships that want to opt into it, opt into it. I think the proposal for using the Ohio Building Officials Association code is a very good proposal. The reason for that is because the Ohio Building Officials Association consists of about 120 governmental entities that have building codes. It's their chief building official, the person who's primarily responsible for it. What they attempt to do with their residential building code is hold hearings around the state and then have people make proposals to amending the model code document to deal with local needs in the state of Ohio, because the OBOA code, which in the past has been based on the Boca residential code, and the next time that they do their update, which they do every 3 years, will be the international residential code. And again, I think you ought to reference that you would use the Ohio Building Officials Association code so that each time that they change it, it just automatically rolls in. That you don't have to go back and conduct hearings on it. And I disagree with what someone said earlier, I think it was Mr. Twining, that you don't have the authority to amend the code. I think it's very clear that you are the ones that are adopting whatever code you use, and that you get to amend it if you want to. I would recommend that you not amend it, and that again is what the primary issue of Ms. Burgess's or Dr. Burgess's study was to try and encourage uniform commercial codes and uniform residential codes. I would give you one caveat as far as your personnel goes. If you hire a full-time person, you need to be aware that Section 307.38 provides that that person is in the classified civil service. Regardless of whether you appoint that person and try and make them, I think you call them exempt employees, you have a certain number. It's been litigated, and the courts have clearly held that what the revised code says is that that person's in the classified civil service, even if you didn't give a test for it or anything. So if you hire a full-time person rather than a contractor, please be aware of that, because we've had 3 or 4 counties that have had that litigated over the years that I'm aware of. And I just raise that so that you're aware of it as the Board of Commissioners. And then finally, the fees. I would, as some of the people testified to, please create your own fee schedule. Do not try and take the fee schedule out of the state building code. It is not designed to deal with your situation. It is designed to deal with the state. My agency, the Board of Building Standards, adopts this fee schedule for the state. And we include in our fee schedule, which is called a plan examination fee because of the semantics problem with the permit to build. It includes not only plan examination, but also building inspection fees. And so that's one fee to cover everything. If you want, you can come up with your own fee schedule for plan examination. You can do it for building inspections, which would be the structural part of it. You can do it for mechanical. You can do it for electrical. Now, you can lump that all together into one fee, but if you do that, you've got to try and determine what the costs are going to be to you as a county And you've got to try and come up, I would encourage you to try and make it a user fee rather than take money out of the general fund, because again, I've dealt with a lot of local governments where some areas, if they're not participating in the building department, get very upset when it comes out of the general fee. They say, why should I be paying taxes for services that are being given to someone else? So I think you should try and come up with a rational fee schedule. I think, though, if you look at Medina County, you look at some of the other counties in the state, Wood County's a good example, you can come up, and by the way, Wood County probably comes as close in your demographic breakdown and how you are as a county of any that I know. In the northern part, they're like you are. They have some industry that spills over from Toledo, more residential, and then they have a lot of rural farming areas. And almost identical. You go from north to south, and it really looks a lot like you do. The one difference is that they have Bowling Green where the state university is. But I think in looking at Elyria today coming through here, you're more of an administrative center, I think, than an industrial, the county seat is. So I think you really closely mirror Wood County, and again, they have a fairly moderate fee. It's not expensive, and in fact, I communicate pretty often with the building official there, and I don't think they've raised their fee in about 10 years, which shows that they must have a good fee to cover their costs. I'd be willing to answer any questions. That's all I have.
Okay. Well, thanks. Since you're obviously seems like the resident expert now here, or non-resident. Right. Do you see, with the public hearings like this, would you see a format that you would recommend to bring people in, like a step-by-step plan that you would recommend? Because some of these counties have been doing it for 10 years. Obviously, they have a lot more experience on what we're going to try to hash out in a public hearing. I mean, is there any recommendations that you see that's happened today that would help move this along?
I think the best way it can be done is to try and involve people before it gets to you, the legislative body that makes the decisions. That you try and educate and also get concerns so that the proposal that would be made to you. I really think that it would have been better to have had a hearing like this, and maybe there was one, I don't know, Mr. Twining could answer that, but have had a hearing like this where it was advertised and interested parties could have come in and they could have made the comments that were made today. Then it could have been brought to you, and again, I think Mr. Twining did an outstanding job of outlining it. I think Jerry's answers were absolutely correct. You're the policy makers, the ultimate decision maker, and it really ought to, I think, come to you after a lot of the concerns have already been addressed. That's the only thing. I think it was actually interesting how well educated everyone is in the topic. And I think you're to be commended for that, because a lot of times we have commercial building departments where the local governments have made no preparation at all. It usually comes about that an area comes under us because people are upset with how the state does the building code enforcement, both in the time it takes to get plans reviewed and the time in which it takes to get inspections made.
Okay, well, thanks. Anybody else have any comments? Ron, do you have any more comments to add? Commissioners?
I don't have copies.
Okay, well, let me read it. The first question was, would your township trustees be interested in a county-wide code? Have the county employee enforce the...
I did have a question for Rita Canfield from LaGrange Township. She